this is informative for you. Hope you get something out of it and get you into the sport. It's kind of hard virtually teaching this, so hopefully you've read over the little blurb I put up there on your application page, and we're going to go over a little bit of that, introduce you to some things that you need for it. But before we get into that, I wanted to make it very, very clear. This is not one of those elitist sports. There are people out there that will say you have to have this fly rod and this fly line and all this gear. No, we're going to make it really simple. Okay, anyone can do it, and it's probably the laziest way to fish that you can, outside of literally just throwing your line out there and waiting, like Courtney does. And she's in the audience, so she knows it. But when we talk about fly fishing, one, shouldn't cost a lot of money. Okay? It's not an expensive sport to get into. A lot of the stuff that we'll talk about here in a minute, you can spend $60 at Walmart or Bass Pro or Cabela's. We just put you a kit with most of this stuff already. The rest of the stuff you probably have around your house. So it shouldn't cost a lot of money. It's really, really easy. You take a little practice. The casting can do a little complicated, but we're going to give you a casting demonstration here in a little bit. Another misconception is that we're only after trout. A lot of people that fly fish mainly target trout, and you can catch trout with it, but you can catch bass, you can catch bluegill, you can catch tarpon, you can catch bluefish, you can catch blue marlin. It doesn't matter. If there's a fish that you can fish for, you can use a fly rod too. So before we got started, I want to make sure that you understand that you can target any fish. It's really, really cheap. It's inexpensive. You don't have to go out there and spend a lot of money for this. And so we're going to get started. There's basically, just like on that list I sent y'all, there's 6 things that you need. And most of these you would need for any kind of fishing anyways. So the first thing I want to talk about, and I'm Bob Rossing it today since we're virtual. So the first thing we need is a fly rod. There's lots and lots of different kinds of fly rods out there. There's different sizes, but for most of you getting into the sport, you'll need between a 4 and a 6 weight. So you go to one of them box stores and you find a package that has a fly rod, fly reel, and all this stuff. You want to look for something that says 4 to 6 weight on the rod itself. So I've got part of a fly rod right here. And on this part of the rod, it'll give you all the information you need to know about that rod. This one happens to be right there on it. It says 5 weight. So what 5 weight means, and we'll get into it a little later, 5 weight has to do with the type of line it's got on. The bigger the weight, the thicker the line. So we might have a 4 weight that's this thick. Might have 6 weight that's just a little thicker. And we'll get into why that's important when we talk about lines. So as far as a fly rod goes, when you're first getting started, just go out there and buy something that says 4 to 6 weight. You'll notice if you've ever fished before, that all different kinds of lengths of rods. If you bass fish, you probably use something that was about 7 foot. If you bluegill fish, you probably use something that's 6 foot. For fly fishing, usually we're looking for something that's 9 feet long. 9 feet long is pretty standard. If that box store only has one that's 8.5, that's okay too. It's not that big of a deal. Fly rod, yes, you need it, but it's not that big of a deal. You want to get one when you're starting out, just trying to learn how to do it. You want one that's fairly cheap. That's the main goal for you starting out. If you get into it and really, really like the sport and you want to try some different things, then you'll get into more expensive rods. But for the first one, just get a nice cheap one. Okay? All right. Second thing we'll need. is a fly. Well, first off, is there any questions about the fly rods? It's kind of hard. I can't see y'all's reactions, so you'll have to type it in the chat. Nancy will let me know what you get.
Not yet, DJ. I think we're good still.
All right, good. We're going to move on to reels. So, fly reel. Fly reel is also very, very simple. We have a few that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But when it comes to fly reels, again, you want something that's pretty cheap for your first time. In conventional fishing, you have spinning rods or spinning reels and bait casting reels and closed face reels. And sometimes they're really expensive. Cheap fly reel is like 15 bucks. They don't have to be expensive. In fly fishing, basically a fly reel is just for holding line. So, thing to remember when it comes to fly reels is it should match the rod. If you have a 4-weight rod, and I know this is very complicated, okay? Very complicated. If you have a 4-weight rod, you want a 4-weight reel. Do y'all have any questions about that? That's okay, I'll answer. But just make sure they match up. If you have a 6-weight, get a 6-weight reel. If you have a 9-weight, get a 9-weight reel. Really not that important. They do have drag systems. We'll talk about them here in a minute. But when it comes to fly reels, just get one that matches your rod. All right. Shouldn't be anything complicated about that. Number 3 is the fly line. All right. This is what we're going to spend the most time on. This is probably the most complicated thing in fly fishing is the fly line. Fly line, what we call fly line, and probably what you've seen before if you've ever seen anybody actually fly fish, is the bright colorful lines, okay? The green lines, the yellow lines that are flying through there, they're whipping it back and forth and making it do all these fancy things, and then it goes and lands on the water. That colorful fly line is what we actually call a fly line, but that's not the only line that we're talking about. So when we talk about fly fishing lines, we're actually talking about fly fishing line system. I got short arms. System. So on the reel, you're going to first put on a type of line called backing. Backing is for really, really, really big fish. I've been fly fishing probably for 10, 15 years, and I've only used backing once. It's on every reel that I have, but really, most time you're fly fishing, you're not going to have a fish that's going to pull tons and tons of line out. If that happens, you're probably going to lose that fish anyways. But fly backing is just extra insurance that if you do get a really, really big fish and he starts pulling drag and has resistance on your reel, you're going to be able to land that fish. So it'll become clear when we see these reels here in a second. So that's the first thing that goes on the reel. Second thing that goes on the reel is called your fly line. So that's the pretty stuff, all right? So this is the colored. So that's colored. That's the green, yellow, whatever color it is. Usually bright color. The reason they're bright colors is to help you see them on the water. In fly fishing, you want to be able to watch your line. We're going to talk about something called mending here in a little bit. We're going to have some videos, but we couldn't get them up. But we're going to talk about these fly lines in just a little bit. Next on the list, number 3, is called leader. So I talked about the fly rod. Fly rod should be cheap. Fly reels should be cheap. This line system, you should spend maybe a little extra money on it. In fly fishing, this is what really helps. You have the fly line, and it's attached to the leader. The leader is a tapered line. It's usually monofilament. It goes from really, really thick to very, very small. We'll explain that when we talk about reels and lines in just a minute. But backing's connected to the line, line's connected to the leader, and then you have tippet. Sometimes you don't have tippet. Tippet is just an extension of the leader, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too. So I know it's a lot of information. I know I'm not showing you a lot, but I'm fixing to change that. So before we go over to the reels, are there any questions about that? Anything we got?
All right, DJ, how about this? Mary Kate, and I guess I do too, with the line and the reel and the rod and all that kind of stuff, about how much do you think it would take to get a decent setup to get started?
Like I said, all this stuff is sold in a kit that you can buy at any of the box stores for like $50. It's pretty cheap to get into. It is less than usually what you'd spend to buy a nice bass fishing rod. So you buy a bass fishing rod, reel, and line, you're going to spend more than it would be to just buy one of these starter kits. Not very expensive at all.
So out of curiosity, if you wanted to go high end or spend a little bit more, what would be the high end of buying gear to fly fish?
Started, I wouldn't recommend spending any more than $100, $150. Now they have rods that are $900 rods. You don't need them. And hopefully a little bit later I'll explain why you don't need them. But yeah, just starting out, $50 to $100 just is perfect.
Good deal.
You don't need anything fancy. Even if you're catching catfish and bass on a fly rod, you still can catch them on a rod that costs you $50.
So if you're not using the rod very often, will the leader and the line get curly? You know, like another pole might do. Will it get curly from being on the reel, and do you have to replace that?
I'll show you some curly lines in here in just a little bit, because some of them that I'm going to show you here in a second have been on my spools like all summer long, so they're really, really curly. You give them a good pull, especially on the fly line and the leader, they'll straighten out enough to be good for you. So
when you buy the kit, I guess, will the reel come with a line system on it, or do you have to load it yourself?
You usually have to load it yourself. If you go to a box store and buy one, you buy a rod and a reel, they'll usually set it up for you. So they'll put all of this, well, they might not put the leader and the tippet on, but they'll put the backing and the colored line on there for you.
All right.
If not, I can show you how to do it here in just a second. Not terribly long.
All right. I think that's got it for the moment, DJ.
All right. So Caitlin's going to pick up the screen, so it might get a little wobbly. It's okay. She's got really still hands. So here we go. I'll go over to the room. Actually, we're going to talk about this rod first. So this rod, as I mentioned earlier, if you can zoom in right there, it says it's a 9-foot 5-way. Okay, so when you match up a rod with a reel, and if you buy a package, this will all come together anyways. But these 4 to 6 weight reels are pretty normal, pretty standard. If you're going to be bass fishing or trout fishing or bluegill fishing, 4 to 6 weight is pretty standard. If you're fishing for something that's really, really big and requires big flies, which we'll talk about in a minute. The bigger the fly, the bigger the fly line. Just think of this line as your bobber. We've all fished with bobbers and sinkers and hooks, pretty simple bobber rig. The fly line is actually going to be your bobber. On a conventional rod, it's the weight of that bobber and the weight of the lure that throws the line out. With fly fishing, because we're using something that's really, really tiny, we're going to need something to help us throw it out there. We're going to need some weight. So when fly fishing, we're not throwing a fly, we're throwing line. All right, so when it comes to lines, got these pretty colored ones. It's really simple, these reels. Just push a little button, they come off. Now, let me get this out here
This is still my leader. All right, so finally got it out. If you look on the inside of this reel, it's got this bright orange line. That's our backing. You'll probably never see that backing unless you're fishing for really, really big fish, or that you're fishing, probably not unless you see big fish. Then you put on the yellow line, your fly line itself. And then, next system, there's a loop right there on the end of that fly line. There's also a loop on the front of the leader. The reason we have this fly leader and this tippet on the end is because if we were trying to tie this fly, this little bitty guy, right here, it's not going to work. There's no way I can pass this fly line through that little hole on this fly. So we have a leader. It starts off really, really thick. Then it's tapered, and it gets smaller and smaller as we go. Till eventually, we get down to where it's small enough, but don't drop it, that it would actually go into the eye. So that's the whole purpose of the leader. Leader is allowing us to attach something to this fly line. That's all it is. Now, when you go to the store and you get your little kit, all of that, the fly line, the backing, the reel, the rod, and probably a few flies will be in there. Sometimes they will include the leader, okay? It's really important that it's tapered. That way you can actually attach the fly, okay? Don't just use regular monofilament. But you'll just make a simple loop, hook them together. You don't want to tie any lines to this fly line. If you tie a line directly to this, it's probably going to rip through and break that fly line. Then you're just going to lose your fish anyways. So really important that it's tapered. And then if you buy a leader just out of the package, you have a 9-foot rod, try to use a 9-foot leader starting out. It's pretty standard. Most people will be fishing 9-foot fly rods, doing 9-foot leaders as well. But the problem comes when you buy a leader and you got it in its 9 feet, okay? This one, clearly not 9 feet, right? So I've used it a lot, probably about time for me to use a new one. After using this a lot and you're changing flies out, maybe this one wasn't working, so I wanted to use something else. Well, I would snip that off and then I'd tie another fly on. Well, you do that enough and you're going to be left with a really, really short leader that's not 9 feet anymore. You're also going to run into a problem where this is way too thick now, and I'm going to need something that I can tie this really, really small fly on with. So that's why we need this stuff called tippet. All right, tippet, it comes in a little box like this, so you can buy it by itself. This is not tapered. This is the same size all the way throughout. So if I'm using a 4-weight fly line, you put on a standard leader. They come in sizes which we call X's. So if you're trying to buy a leader for the first time, 5X, 6X, 7X, those are really, really thin, really, really small lines. Those are for using really, really, really tiny flies. And we can catch 2, 3, 4-pound fish on really, really small things, maybe half the size of a dime, okay? But when we use these small flies, we're going to have some really, really small tippet. So what I'd recommend, 5X tippet, probably the smallest you'd want to go starting out. Buy a set of this. If you want to use something that's a little bigger, the bigger the fly, the bigger X that you're going to need. If you're using something that's maybe an inch long, you might want to use something that's 3X or 2X. But 5X, pretty standard. The bigger the fly, the bigger X. Bigger fly, smaller the X that you would want to use. So let's see.
Hey, DJ.
So recapping. Yep.
So the leader is the go-between between the teeny tiny fly and the bigger, the hefty line, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So we got the big heavy fly line. Then we got the leader that's attached to it. And then the tippet is just what we use to extend the leader, okay? That way we don't have to buy a new leader all the time. Leader's really expensive, expensive as far as line goes. If you buy tippet to extend the leader, so say I get this leader down to 5 feet like it is now. If I get it down to 5 feet and I still want my whole line system to be 9 feet, then I can keep adding more tippet.
And what kind of, I'm sorry, what kind of knot do you use to attach the tippet to the leader?
If you're attaching the tippet to the leader, right here, so that knot right there is called a surgeon's knot. You can probably go to anything on Google, just type in surgeon's knot, and you'll learn how to put these knots together. They're pretty simple.
If you've got something dark,
If it would show up on camera, I would do it in front of the camera, but it's not going to.
If you've got something dark to put behind it, I think they might be able to see that knot a little bit better if you want to. Does that help, guys?
That help?
You'll see a little better. See a few heads nodding yes. So
anything like a surgeon's knot will be great. Some people use a blood knot to connect these, but they're really simple to tie. They're really quick. Just make sure when you do cut them, you can zoom in on that. There'll be 2 tag ends. Just make sure you clip them pretty close to the knot, and then check your knots before you go casting this around. Because if not, these tips will actually catch the line, and you'll end up with a big mess. So, leader, tippet, and then the fly. So if you don't have a kit, if you just go out and you buy a fly reel that doesn't have any line on it, buy a rod. It's really simple to attach this. When it comes to these reels, most of these will come right out of the box set up for right-handed reels, okay? So they'll be underneath the rod like this. And you'll be reeling with your left hand. If you wanted set up for somebody that's left-handed, you're going to be casting a lot with your left hand, reeling with your right hand. Inside of these, inside of them, if you can zoom in on that, there's this little metal piece. So I took it apart. Take it apart. You just push this little lever, pop it out. You can take this little thing, this little metal wire out, just a little clip. Pop that out. You can take this bearing, flip it upside down, put it back in, put the metal piece back on it, and then it becomes a left-handed rod or reel. So really, really simple if you want to switch it up. But when it comes to a brand new reel, so you got the brand new reel, there's no fly line on whatsoever. First step would be to buy backing. All right, this backing, most of them are standard 100 yards. That's mainly to take up space on this reel. If I was to just tie the fly line directly to this reel, it would still work, but when I go to reel in, it would take me forever to get all the line. All right, you'll notice these reels are a little different. This one makes noise. This one doesn't. Nice and quiet. That is preference. If you like your reels to be nice and quiet, most of them are pretty standard now that are quiet. If you go a little older and a little cheaper, sometimes we get these click and paw reels. Well, the click is actually on the inside. There's these 2 little triangles right here. If you don't want this reel to have much drag on it, or you just don't like that sound, you can just flip these little triangles, put the reel back together, and now it's quiet. So that's the drag system. This one has, like we said, a click and paw drag. Drag is just the resistance it will give if a fish is pulling on it. And this reel has what's called a disc drag. So on the inside of here, there's a little ceramic disc that helps give a little resistance when a fish is pulling on this reel. Most of the time when you're fly fishing, if you're just fly fishing for trout or bass, you're probably not going to use much drag. But on the back of these, it's got this little dial. You tighten it up, it's going to be harder for that fish to pull on it. So that's pretty much reels. They're pretty simple. All right, so we get this reel. We got the backing on. You just tie any kind of knot you want, reel it up. Get to the end of this backing, then you'll go out and you'll buy you a box of fly line. If you have a let's say 5-weight, you'll want to get one that says 5-weight line. This one actually says 6. And on these boxes, they'll say WF or they'll say DT. DT just means it's double tapered. So in this fly line, that's on this reel right here is called weight forward line. What that means is this fly line itself is also tapered. The end that's attached to the backing on the back, it's actually really thin compared to this line right here. So this would be the head of the line. Weight forward just means you're going to have more weight outside of the rod to be able to throw bigger flies.
Hang on,
If
I lost the video there.
Oh, we'll wait.
Here we
We
go.
back?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Kaylin's unhappy, but it's okay. We'll go on. So with this fly line, like I said, this one's a weight forward. If it says DT on the box, that means it's double tapered. Double tapered means it's got a big end on each side. Really, nowadays, most everybody is using weight forward. So you'll look for weight forward 5, and then it'll say floating. 95% of the time in fly fishing, you'll want a weight forward floating line, okay? That means this fly line, like it says, is going to float on the surface. There are very, very rare occasions where we may use one that is a sinking fly line, or it'll say intermediate. That means it'll slowly sink. Most of the time, just starting out, all you need is a floating line. All right, so we got the backing, got the fly line. And then depending on the size of the fly you'll be using, it'll say 5X or 6X. Thing to remember is the bigger the fly, the smaller the X you want. So if I have a really, really, really big fly, I might even use 0X. This 5X, 4X, 6X, those are going to be pretty standard for your really, really small flies. And anybody see my tippet? There it is. And then just buy you whatever matching tippet matches your fly line. There are some instances where you might want to use 6X or 4X, but once this leader gets too small and it gets thicker and thicker, this X is going to change. So go back to this one. So right here where I have cut my leader material and attached my tippet, this was originally probably a 4X leader. But after cutting it so far, this is probably up to 3, maybe even a 2X. So the bigger I get on here, I might have to add a tippet that is 4X. And then here's another knot, kind of hard to see. There's another knot there where I've attached another tippet that is even smaller. Some people say don't do that, and it affects the way it casts. Most of the time you're fishing 30 feet away from you, it's not that big of a deal. Unless you're using really, really big flies, 9-foot leader and tippet. So your leader and your tippet combined should be about 9 feet. All right, any questions before we move to the things that we'll actually use to catch fish with? Any questions?
I think we just caught a couple of them because Mary Kate was asking the bigger the fly, the smaller the tippet.
The bigger the fly, the smaller X, or the larger X the tippet. It's kind of confusing. So small flies, 5, 6, or X. If you have a big fly, and we'll show you some bigger flies here in a second. If you have a big fly, you'll want to use 0x and 1x and 2x. Just depends on the size of the fly you're using. If I'm trying to use this really skinny 5x and I have a really, really big fly, I'm not going to be able to push it through the air. Got to have fat line to push a fat fly.
All right, ladies, thumbs up. We're still good? Other questions?
Still good? I know it's confusing. Line is the most confusing thing in fly fishing. You get through that, everything's easy.
So question though, so if I was going to go buy a rod and reel, is there something particular I need to look for to make sure it's a decent one? Is there something, you know, on the reel or about the reel? Is it made of something or certain thing? Or
if you go to a mom and pop store in the middle of Tennessee where nobody does any fly fishing and you have to blow dust off the box, that might matter. But if you go to any store and there's no dust on the box, I mean, it's made in the last 10 years, you're probably going to have a fly rod that's good enough to do what you're wanting to do with it. So most of the rods nowadays that are made are really, really good rods. Even the lower end, cheaper rods are really good rods. Now, if you really get into the sport and you meet up with some people that do have some nice rods and you go to cast them, you'll probably notice a difference and you'll probably be able to cast further. But most of the time when you're starting out, when you're fishing 30 yards away, if you can make a 30-yard cast, you're going to catch a lot of fish. Most of the fishing you'll do is within 30 yards. And we're talking about throwing this little bitty thing, and this is a heavy one actually. We're talking about throwing this little bitty thing 30 yards. So that's a long way for the little bug. Oh, somebody mentioned curly line a minute ago. So you'll notice that is probably what she was talking about.
it's a little hard to see, DJ, with
even the fly line. What?
It's a little hard to see it against that white table.
Is that better?
Yeah, can everybody see that all right?
Everybody see that? I know, shouldn't have picked the white table. But what you'll do is you get a good firm grip on it and pull. It'll get most of those kinks out. They make little line straighteners. I don't own one because this works pretty well. But when you get started, if you'll just do this a couple times to your leader and to the first 15 feet of your line, it'll really help you to cast further and get that fly to lay out better when you cast. So just give it a little pull. Make sure you're not, don't tie it to a pole and try stretching it, okay? That will break the line. But you'd be amazed at how big a fish you can catch. I mean, I've probably caught 7-8 pound trout on this little bitty butt hair line, okay? So little bitty frog butt hair line will hold really big fish because in fly fishing, the rod's doing most of the work. All right. So any more questions before we move to the cute, cuddly things you can make? Don't cuddle with them. They're sharp. Don't do that.
I think we're caught up with questions. Sarah shared a link to a fly package she bought. But I think we're caught up on questions right now.
Good. What was her name?
Sarah.
Sarah. Well, Sarah, we're going to do a fly casting demonstration here in just a little bit, so you can get yours out and you can join us while we're trying to teach you some fly casting techniques. Well, let's move on to flies. So if you read that little thing that I sent y'all, that I put on the website, it went on about flies and the different types. Well, 3 basic types we have are dry flies. They stay dry on top of the water. We have wet flies, or nymphs, as they're often called. They're actually going to be underwater. That's a big misconception. A lot of people think when we go fly fishing, we're using these tiny flies that are floating on top of the water and fish comes up and gets it. Well, that's great as long as they're eating something on top of the water. But most of the time, they're not doing that. Especially in the middle of the day, a lot of times it's going to be hard to get a fish to come up out of the water and grab something on top. So we have wet flies, And then we have streamers. Streamers are anything that's made to look like a bait fish or a crawfish, bigger, meaty things that a fish might eat. Fish are cannibals. They eat smaller fish all the time, especially things like we have around here, bass, smallmouth bass in particular. They are predatory. If it will fit in their mouth, they will eat it. Sometimes if it doesn't fit in their mouth, they will eat it, okay? Things that are not supposed to be in the water, like cans, sometimes they'll eat them. So fish aren't very, very picky, but sometimes we use things that imitate minnows, that imitate bigger food sources, and we call those streamers. So first off, we're going to start off with looking at our dry flies, okay? So in the fly world, in the fish world, when you're really, really small, you start out eating small things. And these things in the water are usually insects. So usually these dry flies are, these are the adult versions of insects that have either, in the case of these grasshoppers, been blown onto the water, or like these mayflies. These mayflies that you've probably seen since May. They're not just in May, but they'll hatch out all times of the year. These mayflies, they got the long wings, but they're about that big. You can get these flies in sizes. This is probably a size 12 mayfly imitation with hook sizes and fly sizes. The bigger the number, the smaller the fly. So if I have a size 20, it'll be really, really tiny. Probably only the size of the gap of the hook on this fly. This is a size 12. This one over here, this grasshopper, is probably like a size 7. So if I compare the two, this one's much smaller than this one. But it just depends on what they're eating. If you can find what a fish is eating that particular day, if you see one coming up and eating on top of the water, you can look at that bug and you can find something that's relatively close to it. We have patterns that look like ants. We have a lot of grasshoppers. We're in the middle of the summer. We got a lot of grasshoppers hopping around, maybe a little beetle. These are all flies that are going to land on top of the water, and we're going to try to keep them on top of the water. We don't want these guys sinking. What we want sinking is the wet flies. So these flies are not going to be seen. They're going to be under the water. You're either going to notice when you're fishing, you're going to see that line jerk away from you, and then you'll set the hook because you have a bite. But these are going to be under the water. We have, just like we have bobbers in fishing, we have bobbers in fly fishing as well. So sometimes they'll be under bobbers, but we have really, really small ones. This is a size 16, but they get even smaller. This one's a size 18. And they get this, I think I put one of the pictures on that article that I put like 6 or 7 on a dime. So these get really, really small. But sometimes they're insects, sometimes they're worms. Can anybody guess what this one's supposed to imitate? Got any guesses on this one? Other ones are clearly bugs, but what's this one?
Jenny said a ladybug.
A ladybug? No, not a ladybug. What do all fish start out as? Every little fish that's ever been born, what does it start out as?
Jenny said an egg.
Yeah, good job, Jenny. So yeah, most of these things start out as an egg, and during certain times of the year, the fish that lay these eggs won't be eating their own eggs, but there will also be other fish that you might be fishing for that will eat eggs. So all these are going to be underwater. Dry flies are going to be on top. And then we get to the big, meaty streamers, okay? So these may imitate crayfish, crawfish, or leeches, or maybe they're little bitty minnows. Big fish like to eat smaller fish. And then we get to some that are, half the size of your hand. If you're going to throw something this big, you're going to need a rod that's bigger than starting out. Okay, starting out fly fishing, you're probably not going to use a streamer that big. The bigger fly you use, the bigger weight you're going to have to use. So with this fly, I might need something as big as a 9 weight or a 10 weight just to be able to throw that one 30 yards. Whereas this one right here, I could get away with a 5 weight to throw that one. 4, 5, 6 weights. most of these flies you can throw. Bigger fly rod, bigger fly line that you'll need. So you want to catch really big bass? I've caught really big bass, really big stripers on this one. I've caught really big bass, really big brown trout on these smaller ones. So just depends on what you're going after. Big fish tend to like bigger things, but you can catch them on little bitty hooks as well. If you get into it and you really like fly fishing, you can even make your own fly. So we've got a simple fly vise. I think I bought this thing with all these tools. This whole kit was like 20 bucks. It was pretty cheap, and I'm still using it like 15 years later. I will tell you this, you are never going to, unless you only tie one fly and you're really, really good at it, you're probably never going to get your money back tying your own flies. But there is something nice about taking different materials and a hook and just tying your own fly and catching a fish on something that you made yourself. So a lot of people get into fly fishing and they just give up fly fishing and they just tie flies. They enjoy it so much. All right, so we talked about flies, we talked about lines, we talked about rods, we talked about reels, talked about a lot of things. There is a few more little things you'll need. So before I jump into that, is there anything about flies in particular that anybody has questions about?
DJ, what's in the bucket? I want to know more about what you use.
What's in the bucket? Okay. So let me get one of these guys. All right, so right here. That one's called a dungeon, that type of fly. Well, on here, that right there is from a deer that I harvested last year. That's actually deer body hair that made that brown and that white. There's lead eyes in between. They're little dumbbell eyes. And all these big puffy feathers. If you've ever seen a marabou boa, little boa feathers, right? Those are actually called marabou feathers. And the hooks are actually buried underneath. The hooks, beads, and that's what's all in this box. So we've got rabbit fur, we've got all kinds of chicken feathers, turkey feathers, and you can go on YouTube and you can spend hours, days on different flies. There is a billion different YouTube videos to show you every single fly that has ever been made. So it might be harder to find the materials. I noticed a lot of y'all lived up in the central part of the state, maybe near the bigger cities where they have bigger Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, or you can go, even better would be to go online, just Google a fly shop and buy stuff from them. Fly shops are always like your business, maybe even more than the box stores. And you'll usually get a lot better materials from places that actually are made to tie flies for you. One other thing you'll need if you're going to tie your own flies, foam. This is simple Walmart foam. Hooks, maybe some beads, just depends on what fly you're actually trying to tie. And didn't know that I would get into this, but if you do get into it, you'll buy these different threads. Now these are special threads. You can't just go to Walmart and buy these threads. You can tie flies with like Walmart thread, but those are usually cloth and they degrade in water pretty fast. So this stuff is actually made out of nylon. It's really, really small and they're really good to tie with. Any of your box stores, any fly fishing store is going to have this kind of line. On the fly lines or this tying thread, the smaller the number, the smaller the actual thread's going to be. So this one's a 70, which is pretty thin. I can break this pretty quickly with my hands. 210, if I'm going to tie a really, really big fly like that one, I would probably use a 210 thread. So bigger number, bigger flies, smaller flies like dry flies, that's when I'd use 70. All right.
Hey, DJ.
Yep.
Sarah's asking, she's often confused about when to use floatant on my flies, if I said that word right. When do you use that?
We're going to talk about that in just a second once we get done talking about flies. There's some other stuff that I'll use. So has anybody else got any fly questions?
Nope, I
Just
think
about the lures themselves.
that's the only one right now. We're good.
Okay, we got plenty of time. We'll come back if you come up with something a little later. Anything at the end, we'll talk about anything fly fishing related. All right, so let's go to my pack. So this is my stuff. I go to the river. Everything that's not a reel, rod, and maybe even a line will go in my pack. Now, a lot of people that you see fly fishing, if you've ever watched a river runs through it, the iconic fly fishing film, they didn't have a pack because they didn't have packs back in the 20s and 30s. So a lot of people today, they're going to use packs, but back then they used vests. And everything that fits in this pack will fit in a vest. Obviously, I like to carry a lot of stuff. But outside of little boxes that have flies in them, you'll use this pack to hold line. So I'll have lines for tippets. I'll have little individual leaders already wrapped up. So if I am fishing a really, really big fly, and then I want to switch over to a small little nymph or a dry fly, instead of changing all the tippets out, I'll just go in, get a new leader and put it on. It's a lot quicker and a lot more inexpensive than cutting all these different leaders up. But there's a few other things that you'll notice on the outside that you might want. Every fly fisherman needs a pair of nippers, okay? Most of you probably already have these. I think these came out of one of my drawers in the bathroom anyways. So my wife's probably not very happy with me, but that's okay. Second thing you'll need is with these nippers though, you want to use these because you'll be changing flies a lot. Do not use your teeth. It will hurt your teeth if you keep biting fly line, leader and any kind of monofilament line. So use nippers. All right, second thing you'll need is a pair of nips or tweezers or pliers. These forceps work really, really well because a lot of times we're using hooks really, really tiny. All right, I've got some flies here that are really, really tiny. I mean, little bitty. If you're using flies that are that small and you're trying to get them out of a fish's mouth, you are not going to be able to do it with your bare hand, especially if they're down in the fish's mouth. That little fly I just showed you, I've caught 5-pound fish on. So it's not the size of the fly that's going to catch fish. But trying to get that hook out, you're going to need something that you can reach way down the fish's mouth and grab a hold of it. And these are really great too if you can find some that lock on the bottom. So as soon as I grab that fly, I can lock down. Now even if the fish flops, it actually helps me out. All right, so I just clip them on. We'll de-loop. All right, now what Sarah was talking about, I think it was Sarah anyways, is fly floating, okay, or fly dressing. This stuff is what we use on dry flies only, and this helps keep them floating a lot longer. So if you put this stuff on there, and it's just basically just a little wax. If we do that and we put it on these dry flies, you'll coat it on there. You just put it all over there. And it may look like this thing won't float anymore because it's got the stuff on it. But that will actually allow it to float a lot longer. If I just put any fly float in this and put this dry fly out there, I'll probably get 10-15 minutes of it staying on top of the water. As long as I'm fishing and mending properly, that'll stay on the water pretty long time. If I use this, I can probably fish for 2 or 3 hours with this same fly, and it'll ride on top of the water the whole time. So just get yourself a little bottle of fly floating up. Depends on how often you use dry flies, but I think this whole bottle is like $3, so not very expensive. Just soak it on there before you even start. If you try fishing with this and it gets waterlogged and then you try to put this on there, it won't work. So put the dry fly floating on it. Sometimes they come in gels like this one, or they're powders. I seem to find that this works better than the powders, but that's just me. All right, Thank you. So outside of those few things, I mentioned these earlier. These are strike indicators, okay? And the really, what?
We got a question. So do you always put that on dry flies?
I always put this on dry flies. If I'm going to fish a dry fly, I'm going to use this. Unless it's like something I don't, if I accidentally left my tack on the bank somewhere, then I might switch a fly like a big grasshopper that's going to stay floating for a long time anyways. I might not use it on that. But for the most part, if I'm using dry flies, I'm putting some kind of floating on. Anything else about the floatant? Yeah, okay. So we're gonna move on to our strike indicators. If you're really fancy, you can call it a strike indicator. The rest of the fishing world that doesn't fly fish is gonna call it a bobber, okay? So these are bobbers. These work just like the bobber that you normally use. We good? Okay, so this works just like the bobbers we would normally use. These are gonna hook onto the leader. And you can adjust these up and down. Some of them come with these little quick connects. Some, get the toothpick out. Some will go over, so when you're rigging up your line, you'll put the line through there, your leader material through there. And then you'll take your toothpick and you'll shove it down in there, and that'll hold that in place. So if I know that the fish are on the bottom at 3 feet of water, I can put this 3 feet up my leader, and that'll cause that fly to stay right there in the strike zone and put it right in front of their face. So obviously we're not going to use these if we're using dry flies, but if we're using small nymphs or wet flies, we can use a strike indicator or a bobber and make it float over. Now notice these are not the size of a typical bobber that you would use anywhere else. In fly fishing, we want the line to do all the work. The fly line is going to be what throws the lure out there. So just like the flies, we want these to be pretty small. This is a really big strike indicator. Unless you were using like 2 or 3 flies underneath this, you wouldn't need anything this big. So most of them are going to be pretty tiny. And then we have the stick-ons. Basically, you just pull these off. They're a little sticker. You pinch them, and it works the same way as these other bobbers. The only thing about these is I don't like these because once you use them, that's it. You can't move them up and down. You got to know for sure where the fish are if you're going to use these, because you can't adjust them. The good thing about these, though, is that if you have a fish that's really spooky, okay, he doesn't like seeing you, he doesn't like things plopping on top of the water in front of him, these land on the water really lightly. They're really small, they don't make a big splash. All right, okay, other tools that you will need to fly fish. One, these buffs are actually really good, not as masks, but as sun blockers. So sunscreen, lots of clothes that are not gonna let you be sunburnt, because a lot of times when we're fly fishing, we're wading the creek or we're in a boat above the water, and that water reflects a lot of light. So if you've ever been canoeing before and you go out there, and you're in that bearing sun all day long, yeah, you're gonna come back looking like a lobster. So skin cancer, real bad stuff. Use sunscreen, use protective clothing. Never go fishing without glasses, okay? For 2 reasons. In fly fishing, if you're not wearing glasses, it becomes really dangerous because these little bitty hooks that are this big are flying past your head at like 90 miles an hour. These are for protection and for an additional benefit. If you're fishing any kind of fishing, if you're bass fishing with conventional tackle, a lot of people will recommend using polarized sunglasses. So if you go to the store, if you look on the inside, it'll say polarized. What polarization allows you to do is just like on a camera filter, it allows you to see through the water. It takes some of that glare off. You'll be amazed if you've never fished with polarized glasses and you get beside the water, put a pair of polarized glasses on, you can see pretty well what's under the water, especially if you're fishing a lot of these clear streams. If you go up into the Smoky Mountains, or if you go out west to some of the rivers and fly fish, put a pair of polarized glasses on. That way you're not blinded when you're looking into the water all day long, and you can see the fish a lot better. And again, hat, sun protection, and fly protection. When you get started fly fishing, you're learning how to cast. I'll reiterate this here in a minute. Do not put a fly on when you're practicing casting for the first time. If you're putting a hook on, it's going to end up in the back of your head, okay? And we don't want that, right? We'll avoid any kind of surgeries to your head, okay? It's not going to be that bad because the hooks are really small, but still annoying when you get a hook in the back of your head. So when you're practicing for the first times, and if you fish for a long time, make sure you're wearing some kind of protection on your face, your eyes, especially when you put that hook on for the first time. We're going to talk about fly casting here in a minute, but I don't think we got the videos up. There is one thing we have to mention before we go to our casting. So we're going to go back to the board. Courtney, follow me. Okay. So most of the time when you are fly fishing, okay, you'll be on a river, okay? You can fly fish on a pond, you can fly fish on a lake, that's great. But a lot of us, we want to get into fly fishing because we get to fish in these just gorgeous places, okay? If you've ever been, I just got back from Montana. It is gorgeous, beautiful. Everybody should go at least once. You go out west to those rivers that are just crystal clear. You go out to the Smoky Mountains and it's crystal clear. Probably going to be fishing small waters. You're probably going to be fishing spinning reels or fly rods. So when you go out to a river and fly fishing, you have to do something, okay? Now, a lot of people, and if you go on YouTube and look at beginning fly classes, beginning fly casting, because that's what people get concerned with. A lot of people are worried, oh no, the casting's too hard, so I can't get into it. Well, casting's not that hard. I'm going to break it down for you, but there's something that's way, way, way more important than you being able to cast 50 yards, okay? So the most important thing we have in fly fishing is called, that one doesn't work, mending, okay? Very important topic. Didn't cover it in my little article because it's complicated. All right, so mending, so you cast it out there. You've got your river. Well, I'm going to make my river straight. I like straight rivers. Bob Ross here. And I got a boulder here, a boulder there. And we'll put a boulder here. But when you cast, you make that cast and you'll cast out here. The water's going this way, okay? So the whole time you're fishing, as soon as that lands, it's going to start moving this way. Your fly is going to start moving this way. If you are fishing and you want to imitate something that is a bug, okay? A bug in moving water is going to go one direction here. It's going to go that way, right? It's not going to go this way. It's not going to go that way. It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down. It's usually going to go flat. It's just going to be washed down with the water. And that's how fish eat. Fish will hide behind little rocks. So there's a fish, okay? Well, fish, he's not going to want to be out in this fast-moving water, okay? The water's coming this way. It's moving really fast. When it hits that rock, it's going to flare out. So this fish is going to want to be in this really slow water behind an object. That object might be a tree in the water. It might be a rock in the water. It might be a hole in the water. But he's going to hide behind that, and he's going to be lazy, okay? Big fat fish are lazy. So they're going to be hiding behind the fast-moving water. They're going to be in slow water. But what they're hoping for is a little bug's going to be in here, and it's going to float past his rock. He's going to come out, eat the bug, come right back in behind the rock. Doesn't want to spend a lot of energy swimming around. So what you want to do to catch this fish is to do what we call mend, okay? So when you cast straight out, what's going to happen is this fly, as it goes down, if you don't mend, it's going to get further and further and further away from that fish. So to keep that fly where we want it, what we're going to do is throw a loop into that line. So that water is going to be pushing against this loop. And this whole time, this fly is going to stay straight. This water is going to eventually straighten out this line as it goes down. So now that line's going to be out here. We'll have to throw another loop in the line. Throw another loop in the line, and it's going to cause that one to stay straight. If you don't mend, that fly is going to end up like this. Sometimes the water close to you is moving slower than the water right here. If that's the case, the fly is going to be pushed really, really fast, and this fly line is going to bow forward. So to prevent that, if the water in between you and the fish is really slow, instead of putting a front mend, we'll put a back mend. So our whole goal is to make sure this fly goes by this fish naturally. We want it to have zero motion to it. It's called a dead drift. We want that fly float by it as normally as possible. If you make your fly look like food, you're going to catch a lot more fish. All right, so that's how we do that. And we're going to show you mending out in the grass here in a minute. But again, if you're trying to go out to a river and you go out there and you just start casting, okay? Yeah, you're going to see where the fish are, and they're going to be back here behind these boulders. But if you just start fishing, you're going to miss a lot of these other fish that are just kind of hanging out in the middle of nowhere. So every time you get to a river, spend 15 minutes just watching. A lot of times you'll see a fish coming up and eating a fly right off the top of the water. And you'll be able to target that one particular fish really easily. Even if you're fishing with a spinning rod or a bait casting rod, if you'll spend 15 minutes just looking at the water, you'll catch a lot more fish. But that mending is very, very important. If we mend correctly, we're going to catch a lot more fish because that fly is going to act like bait more often.
So basically, if I'm getting this right, I don't know much. Mending is adjusting your line so that your fly floats to the target that you want it.
Right.
And because of the
Naturally as possible.
because of the current, you sometimes have to put space or loops in the line.
You either put a loop forward or a loop back, depending on how fast the water. If you're right here and you're fishing that pretty line, if that water's moving quick, that line's going to move quick, and it's going to cause your bug to pull in toward the bank, away from the target. If it's moving really slow, like even sometimes it might even be moving this way, but the main river is going this way. Well, in that case, we're going to have to throw our line way up here so that when this gets pushed over here, your fly still stays in that straight line.
That takes a lot of practice, I'm assuming.
It takes some practice.
And learning the river.
Just, if you pay attention, you'll figure out real quickly. If you just throw a bobber, just no line or anything, you just throw something that floats on the water. If you'll watch it, you can pretty much judge the speed of that water. The speed of that little thing you threw in should be the speed of that bug floating through the water. Underwater, it might be a little quicker, but for the most part, if you're dry fly fishing, you want to match the speed of whatever you threw in. And a lot of time, I know a lot of people make this mistake too. You might see this beautiful boulder and you know there's a fish behind it. There might be a little hole right here that a fish is sitting in. If you just look at that boulder, you're going to miss this fish, and this fish might even be bigger. So not only are we looking for things that are coming out of the water, but go down here. So pretend this is the bottom. All right, there might be this big boulder right here, and there's probably a fish behind it, right? There's probably a fish behind it. But there's probably a bigger fish underneath this hole. Because here's what happens. This water is moving really fast over the top of it. But he's sitting down here where it's pretty slow, okay? Not a lot of things are coming down here. But what he's waiting for is he's waiting for something to come just this height. He'll come up and get it, come right back down. So spend a little time looking for where that fish might hide. Fish are lazy, especially fat fish. The fish that we want to catch, the fish that we want to eat, they're lazy. They got fat for a reason.
I think you might have some questions.
All right, get some questions. Nancy with us?
Oh, she's muted.
Unmute
Sorry,
yourself.
I got you. Rookie mistake there. So I think we're good. Is Mindy making sense? Because that's a tougher one there. Sarah is saying that she never understood why she was being told to mend when she was fishing, and now she understands. Good explanation.
Now she understands. Yep, because you want that fly to be as natural as possible floating down through there. Now sometimes mending will actually help our bait look good. Okay, because when you do mend, you're going to move that fly just a little bit, but that little bug might be trying to get up out of the water column, come an adult and hatch out. So most of these aquatic insects that these fish eat, they start out living underground, and then they hatch and they struggle up through the water column. So sometimes even when you get done and your fly is way down here, well, when your line gets nice and tight, that fly is going to come up off the line. So here's our fly. It's normally drifting down through here, right? When you get to the end of that line, it's going to cause that fly to pull up off the bottom. So a lot of times, even at the end of your cast, when it's coming up off the bottom, that's when a fish is going to hit it. So yeah, mending's great. You want to try to mend and make that fly float as naturally as possible, but it's not always the go-to. And if you are fishing a streamer, okay, streamers are crawfish and bait fish. They don't float naturally, right? So if I was using a dry fly, I'd want to mend. If I was using a wet fly, I'd want to mend. But if I'm using a streamer, what I'll do, I get a pin that works, is I'll cast at, say the water's going this way, okay? If you will cast at like a 45-degree angle downstream, so your fly lands here. Well, that you don't want to necessarily mend unless you know a fish is right here. So what you'll do is you'll let that drift back, and as it's drifting, that fly will get closer and closer to you. So at the end of your run, you may be down here. But a bait fish is not going to move like that, right? So what you'll want to do, and I'll show you this here in a minute, when you get that cast all the way out here, what you'll do is you'll strip line. You'll pull in line towards you. So as that bait fish hits the water, it's going to move like this. Just like a bait fish running away from a bigger fish that wants to eat it, okay? So your main goal in any kind of fishing, I don't care if it's fly fishing or bass fishing with a bait caster, you want your lure to look like food. You do that, you'll catch a lot more fish. All right, any more questions?
DJ says it's interesting to learn about this fish behavior.
Yeah.
I think we're good right now, DJ. It's about 12 after, so let's show them how to cast that rod.
Okay, no, we're running out of time. Okay. All right, so come over here for just a second. All right, so these rods, they'll come in multiple pieces because it's hard to ship something that's 9 feet. If you are getting a rod for the first time and you plan on traveling a lot, they come in 2 pieces, or they can come in as many as 4 or 5 pieces. The more pieces you have, the easier it is to travel. So 2-piece rods, you probably don't want to buy unless you fish pretty close. All right, before going outside, never take a fully completed rod out a doorway. The number one thing that kills any kind of rod, any kind of fishing pole, is doors. So break it down into small pieces, and then we'll go out.
Oh, I'm hung on the chair.
Zoom problems. But it makes some of them giggle, though.
Sure.
Just so y'all know, that's Courtney. Y'all can laugh at her later.
Yeah. She's our red person. All right, so all these eyes you'll see on here, they're called snake guides. just make sure when you put them together, it's called a furl, make sure you line up the eyes, okay? So you line up the eyes, pull it nice and tight, look down it, make sure it's nice and straight. All right, you get that. Take your reel out. Oh, loosen the drag, tighten it earlier. All right, so we loosen the drag so we can pull some line out. We got our tippet, we got our leader, and then we get to our fly line. When you're setting this up, make sure you pull out a lot of line, okay? This is going to become important here in a second. Take it. There's a little groove for this reel to sit in. Close it down. Make sure it's nice and tight. There's 2 on this one. All right, important. Grab this fly line. Make a loop. Put it through the guides like that. If you don't, and you just grab the end of the fly line and grab it and try putting it through, here's what's going to happen. It's going to end up, I don't have the tip of it, but if you just do that, you'll eventually get to where you can't reach up anymore because we're not 9 foot tall. And you drop it, it'll go all the way back down through. But if you make the loop, you don't have to go all the way and start again. So quickly do this because we don't have a lot of time. We want to get to that campfire tonight.
Ready for them s'mores.
Ready for the s'mores, yes. We like doing these classes in person, y'all, because then we get to share all of our food. Y'all kind of got gypped with this whole COVID thing now. We don't get to eat all of our good food. But hopefully you're doing it at home and you can eat all the good food too because you're doing it yourself. That's why we're here. So make sure when you do this, get all the line out of it. If you're trying to cast with a leader inside here, you'll break these guides out. All right, so when we get to our fly casting, pull out. When you're starting out, just get about 15 feet, guys. That's all the fly line you need to practice, okay? So you grab it just like you're using a hammer. You grab it on top. Take your trigger finger, just like a gun. Grab that line with your trigger finger, okay? And all I want you to do, I don't want you to worry about this starting out. Just want you to focus on your casting. So put the thumb on top, get a nice good grip. Don't be squeezing it to death, okay? Just a nice relaxing grip. All right, fly fishing is lazy, okay? Lazy. Nancy, lazy, okay?
So what you're telling me is to chill out when I cast, right?
Chill out.
Chill out.
Drink a beverage with one hand. You know, grab this, relax, enjoy fishing, okay? So when we cast, we want to do 3 things, okay? We want this rod to bend. When it bends, it's got a lot of potential energy in it, and it's called loading. So we want to load the rod. The cast is just like any other rod you cast. You're going to come back here, and about the 1 o'clock position, and you're going to stop. If you stop, that's the second thing you need to do. You want to stop this rod. You give it a good hard stop, and you're going to wait till that line falls back behind you. When it's almost straightened out, you're going to pull forward and stop at, 11 o'clock, okay? If my hand's a clock, this is 1 o'clock, this is 11 o'clock. You don't want to drift back. A lot of people, they see these people doing it, and they're whipping it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. If you're going all the way to 3 o'clock like this, your line's going to bow, and you're just going to have a big knot in front of you, okay? So when you start out, you want a good, solid, fast acceleration, and then you're going to stop here. Stop at 1. Then you're going to go forward, and you're going to stop at 11. If you do it correctly, you stop at 1, you stop at 11, that fly line's going to stay in a straight line. So you want the rod to bend. You want the hard stop on the front, hard stop on the back, and you want that line to straighten out. Hard stop 1, hard stop at 11. It's kind of hard to see that. Courtney, if you'll come to this side.
Okay.
I promise I won't hit you. There's no fly on here. Another thing, don't put a fly on here. You don't want a hook flying through the air because you're probably going to do it wrong the first couple times. There's tons of videos. You can rewatch this video. It'll be recorded. But you want want that line to go in a straight line. If you're doing 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, here's what's going to happen to your line. This isn't going to work, okay? End up in a pile in front of you. You want a nice hard stop at 1. You want a good hard stop at 11. So if you do it correctly, stop, stop, stop. I'm not putting my arm way back here. I'm not putting my arm way up there. 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 11 o'clock. If you do that and you get those good hard stops, that line will go in a straight line, and that fly will be exactly where you want. All right, I don't know if you can focus in on the line.
I'm gonna try filming from in front of you to see if I can see the line.
I'm gonna put it on the ground here a second. You'll be able to see it.
Okay.
If you stop at 1, you stop at 11. 1, 11.
Hey, Courtney, you're going to get a little bit closer to him and maybe shoot from the side where the line's shadowed against the building so you can hear him and see the line. I think it works best.
All right, so
Okay.
you're going 1 to 11, 1 to 11. Once you get out the line that you want, you lay it down, that fly is going to land out in front of you. If you don't, here's what will happen. Line's all curled up because I didn't stop at 11. If you stop at 11, that fly line's going to be a lot straighter. All right?
Now show it if you don't stop.
If you don't stop, here's what's going to happen. That's what happens. Should be nice, good stops. Don't be fading back. A lot of people that get really frustrated is because they're trying to do this number. You're doing this number, and you're trying to push that fly as hard as you can. I don't know if you can hear it. Hear that? Hear snap? That snap means you just lost your $2 fly, okay? Or it's way back there in the tree. So, pull back to 1, pull back to 11. Fly casting is really easy. I can sit here and talk to you and do this, okay? Maybe there's something above us, though, and we can't do that. Well, you can also draw that line to the side. Obviously, the line is easier that way.
Yeah, actually you can.
Stop, 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 stop. Doesn't matter where you draw the straight line. You just want that line to go in a nice straight line. If you do this, it's going to end up way over here. If I want to cast over there, I want that fly line to go in a nice straight line over there. If I get to going way back to 3 o'clock and to 12 o'clock, it's going to end up way over here. And I'm totally going to mess up. All right, so just to show you this mending, because I know we don't have a lot of time, we got just a few seconds left. If you're fishing, so I'm fishing, and I'm fishing right here, and it's going downstream to my right. If you want to mend, and that water is going really fast in front of us, just toss a little line up there. If the water in front of you is going slower, lift the line to the other side. Okay? Lift the line to the other side. Okay, just that right there is going to cause that fly to float naturally. Okay, so that's all mending is. If the water's going really slow in front of you, you'll do a back mend. If the water's moving like it should be in a normal river, you'll just throw a little loop in front of you. Just
Do that again. Do the loop.
All right, so it's out there straight, but we want to mend, so whoop, sorry, whoop,
Okay.
all that. You don't need a lot. Once that fly gets further down, that line will straighten out. Then you just throw another one in there. If it gets down to a point where the water starts to slow down, you can do a little mend in front of it. Just want to make that fly act as naturally as possible. Spend some time on the water just looking at the mend, right? You can put your little strike indicator on there and try to make that act just like a sweet gum ball that fell in the water, right? All right, we got any more questions before we have to get out of here?
Thanks.
So yeah, and ladies, if we're missing questions or whatever, I think we're good and we can answer a few more questions even if we go over. We want to respect your all
Yeah,
time. We're here as long as you guys want to be here to answer questions. So Mary Kay wants to know, so 11, meaning 11 o'clock, is aiming at your target. Is that yes or no?
if my hand's straight up and I'm a clock, this should be 11.
That's one.
Yeah, this should be 11 to y'all, right? This is 12. This will be 11. So in your back cast, you'll stop at 11. On your front cast, you'll stop at 1. Just trying to do it like a clock.
But is the 1 o'clock, is that pointing towards the target? Like as you're doing it?
It doesn't really matter whether it's 1 or 11. Just on your forward cast, stop here, and on your back cast, stop here. So if I'm facing this way, I guess the front cast would be the 1 o'clock, right? Back cast would be 11 o'clock. I might look backwards on camera. I don't know.
I think what she's just trying to say is that last motion,
Right.
You're going to be pointed in the direction.
On the last motion, so you're ready to cast. You got enough line out, and you're ready to cast. When you hit 11, that line straightens out in front of you, and you just lower your rod tip to the wall. Okay. Really important on streamer fishing. If you streamer fish, put the rod tip in the water. It's not going to hurt. What that does is it allows to take the slack out of the line a lot faster. So if that streamer hits the water and it instantly gets hit, you don't have a bunch of slack to try to set the hook. In fly fishing, this is called a fly set. When you get a bite, just raise it up. Now, you don't have to be like bass fishing. You see those bass anglers on TV and they go reel down and they pull like that. If you do that, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to snap the line or you're going to send that little fish into the next zip code. So just raise up on the rod tip. The rod will do the rest, okay? You go up to whatever this is, 1, 11, 12, okay? You do that, that's good enough to set the hook on a fly rod. All right, anything?
Ladies, if you want to unmute, if some of you if you got questions for DJ.
Yeah, I'll be able to hear you.
If anybody wants to do that, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Anything we talked about. You can watch this video again. I don't know if we're allowed to promote other things, but a lot of people getting into fly fishing, if you'll go to like organizations like Orbis, they've got all kinds of videos. You go onto YouTube, there's all kinds of videos on how to do this, all right? Just get lost with it, okay? A lot of the reason people like fly fishing more than other types of fishing is this rod. This rod is not a thick catfish rod. You get a half-pound fish on this rod, it's going to feel like you have a 40-pound catfish, okay? And this rod will handle a 40-pound catfish, and it will feel like a 140-pound catfish. So,
Orvis actually has a virtual fly casting class right now. Yeah, they were telling us about it in the Smokies that they've got a virtual. So if you go to orvis.com, I bet you could find that class as well.
Called the Learning Center. Anything you ever wanted to know about fly fishing is on there.
So Jenny is, when she was first introduced to fly fishing, she was instructed to really use a lot more arm movement and less wrist than she sees you using, like running my elbow along the top of a railroad fence. Your demo seems more shoulder friendly.
I've heard people say it's all wrist. I've heard people, you hold a book under your arm and then you kind of cast with your elbow in. It doesn't matter. Relax. Enjoy it. You stop at 11, you stop at 1, you stop at 11, you stop at 1. You'll cast fine. I've seen some ugly fly casters catch amazing fish. I've seen good fly casters catch 0 fish. Like I said, less to do about the casting, more to do about making that fly, that lure look like food.
Do you have a question?
For practicing, we're supposed to use like 15 feet. But when you get
15,
out,
20 feet, yeah.
when you get out to the stream, I mean, you use more than that, and
You can, depending on where your fish is. So you watch the water for a little bit, kind of have an idea of where that fish is. You can shorten that line up a little bit, and you can fish closer to you. You can pull more line out. Never let go of this stuff, okay? Nancy, watching. Never let go of that. Hold that in your trigger finger, okay? When you want to stop this line, you just hold that trigger finger, that line against the rod. When you're casting, and you go back here, and you stop, if you will open your finger up a little bit, Not all the way, just let it slide through your finger. And you'll hold the line with your other hand. So we got all this line at our feet. It's called a haul. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the line out. We're going to stop at 11. And if we'll open up a little bit, not let it go, but open up, it'll pull line out as it's going back. And then we'll have more line out. So when I get it all together, it looks like this. So open my hand, let the line out. Open my hand, let the line out. And then we get more line to cast in front of us. So depending on what you're using will tell you how far you can cast. If you're using a really, really heavy fly, so this is 6 weight fly line. If I'm using one of those big streamers I showed you earlier, I might be able to make it 10 yards. If I'm using a small little number 18, with a little indicator, I could probably throw that 50 yards if you get really, really good at it and you get a rod that's really matched to your line. But yeah, half a football field is really, really long cast. Most of your fish are going to be in the first 30 yards.
All right, ladies.
If you need more information, just let me know. I'll try to answer it a little better. But yeah, on the back cast, if you'll just open your hand a little bit when you stop, it'll allow line to straighten out and you'll have more line when you go forward. Now, if you get really good at it and you watch some of those fly casting classes, there's single hauls, there's double hauls, and there's all kinds of ways to get more line out there. We have a lull in questions. I might show you one more cast. Is there any more questions?
I think we're caught up at the moment.
Okay, so one more problem you'll have if you ever go to a river or a pond or a lake is sometimes you'll have stuff behind you, right? My water's over here, I want to cast there, but I got stuff behind me. And if you do this, you'll be up in a tree like a monkey trying to get that fly out, right? So we don't want that. So you got the river out in front of you. You can't make a good back cast. So what we're going to do is called a roll cast. So what you'll do is you'll have line out on the water. And then what you'll do is you'll slowly, I tried to teach this to Nancy yesterday, you slowly pull back to that 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock, whatever clock it is, and you just hold it like that. And what you'll do is you'll make a D with this line. So hopefully everybody can see the D with the line. Make it a cursive D here. So I'll stop here, and then one good motion with the line still on the water, I'll just bring it forward. Now you can do that up until a certain point. So I got some line out, and I got that much line out. So when I come back here, the tension of the water is holding the line. Make that D, and I just go through my forward cast. There's 2 casts. There's back cast, there's forward cast. We're going to stop this one and just go forward. And it's a little easier on the water and with a fly, but usually it'll straighten that line out. And if there's something behind you, you don't have to get stuck. That's called a roll cast. Not as efficient as the regular cast, because that's nice and straight. We'll wrap up. Roll cast not going to be as efficient as a straight cast, but if there is something behind you, it does help. All right. How are we looking on time? Still got time for a few more questions?
We're good as long as they're
Everybody
good.
ready to go?
Yeah, ladies, you don't have to.
Somebody
stay.
just
I know
sent a
we're-
question.
Yeah, I know, ladies, we're getting into time here. Like I said, we're here for as long as you guys have questions, want to talk about stuff. So, Jenny,
We're good for another hour.
when we first approach the water, do we use a roll cast to get the line out or a regular cast?
All right, so if, give me a second, you're a lot line. All right, so we pulled this much line in. Ta-da, we got through our rod, good job. So just lay it on the water, make sure it's not rolled up on your rod. And if you'll just whip it back and forth like this, there's something behind you, that'll get the rest of the line out. The surface tension of the water will drag the line out of your
your rod. You just whip it back and forth. And then you can pull back and do your roll cast.
Cool. Yeah, he's, just so y'all know, he's picking on me a little bit because he's trying to teach me this yesterday, and that hard stop at 11 and 1 is very important. Just saying from experience. I don't know how many times he had to say that to me yesterday, but
A lot of people that are fly fishermen, or they fail at fly fishing, it's just because they're impatient. They see these people online, they're just whipping it back and forth, whipping back and forth. You do that, you're not going to be very successful at putting your fly where you want it. Easy.
Yep.
I can walk down a stream like this. It's a lot easier than pulling all my line in and then walking. So just hard stop, hard stop. You want that rod to load up. When you stop, it straightens it out. It sends that line with a lot more energy than if you do this. All right, so good hard stops.
good deal, ladies. Other questions? It's a lot of fun. It does take a little practice, or at least it does for me, but it is a lot of fun. Are we missing any questions in the
You'll
chat?
just get out in your yard, 30 minutes, watch a video right before you do it on casting, go out in your backyard for 30 minutes, you'll quickly get it, okay? Remember those hard stops, accelerate to a stop, you'll be fine. And if you learn how to mend, you learn what fly to use, you just go on, just Google, what flies are biting for whatever place you're going, and you'll catch a lot of fish. And it'll be really fun because you'll have it on a really, really light rod.
All right. How about this, ladies? Olivia just jumped in the room with us. I think we've about got all of the fly fishing questions, but hit us up if we've missed any or you think of some. Is there any bow questions about our weekend together? Anything you all want to know more about our schedule or any of the things going on with bow this weekend, our virtual bow together? Olivia just jumped in here so we could hit her up. If y'all don't know Olivia, she kind of coordinates the program for Fish and Wildlife. She just waved at everybody, I think. So if there's anything in particular about bow that you might want to know, it might be a good chance to catch her and ask her those questions as well. And you can unmute if you want to, or throw it in chat, whatever you all are most comfortable doing. It's all good with us.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Thank you guys for being a part of the fly fishing class too on the first day. Oh, you guys can see my cat too. He's pretty sure he likes the backyard birding class today the best, probably. But anyway, I posted the link in the chat for you guys to view the content for this class, as well as your classes for tomorrow and Sunday too. I had sent that out in the email as well. Yeah, just remember to look at the links I sent you guys in the emails that have all your Zoom information for your upcoming classes. And two, I sent out a pre-survey today. If you guys have taken it, thank you. If you haven't taken it already, please do so. Maybe tonight, right after this call, if you have time, only take a few minutes. And at the end of BOW, at the end of the weekend, we'll have a post survey as well. So whoever does the pre and post survey, send me an email, say that you completed both after Sunday, and then I'll put you guys into a drawing to win a free bow for next year, if it can be in person, if not 2020. So usually the bow weekends is $95. So to win a free bow pass would be pretty awesome. But let me know if you have any questions at all. My contact info obviously is on the bottom of all my emails, but also on Facebook too. But thank you, everybody.
Hey, Olivia, I didn't mention the giveaways you're doing.
Yeah.
If you want to share with them what we're talking about when you say the bow registrations.
Yeah, so the one giveaway is your instructors are keeping track of who's attending the classes. So we're going to do a giveaway for, again, that free bow pass for those of you guys that have attended all 4 classes at the end of the bow weekend. So that's one giveaway. Other giveaway is we're going to do a drawing at the virtual campfire tomorrow evening, and that's at 8 p.m. So we'll do another drawing there for a free pass. And then, yeah, we got a few other ones up our sleeves.
Yeah, that's 8
see
p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern. Yep.
Yep. You forget about the Central Time people down here.
I know. Hey. Yep, we're running on Eastern time.
How do we connect? Did you see the question? How do we connect on the campfire?
Yep. That is in the attachment I sent you guys today as well. It's another Zoom meeting. It'll be a Zoom campfire meeting as well. So yeah, check out that attachment and you'll see the login for the campfire. And then Jenny, how do we do the post questionnaire after each class? So you'll do it after the whole weekend is done. You'll do that post questionnaire. And then we'll also have a section in there too to leave comments for your instructors.
Hey DJ, Sarah mentioned she's fished the Cumberland and Otter Creek. Do you recommend any other fly fishing spots in Kentucky? Jenny's been to Wolf Creek Dam and West Branch Pond Camp in Maine. Fabulous, that sounds good too. Other areas that you might know of around the state that you could recommend?
It depends what you want to do. A lot of people, especially in central Kentucky, like fly fishing for smallmouth. A lot of Kentucky River, what's that other one around Louisville?
Elkhorn, maybe?
Elkhorn, yeah. A lot of people like fishing a lot of those little streams feeding into it for smallmouth. Cumberland's really good. It's probably our best trout fishery in the whole entire state. Hatchery Creek, sections of it are fly fishing only, and they've got 7, 8, 10-pound trout just sitting there 5 feet from you.
We stock trout in several locations across the state, and that's on our website, right?
If you go to our website and look up where to fish, or there'll be a spot under the fishing tab that says trout stocking. That will show you every single place that we stock in the whole state for trout. So just go to the counties that are around you, look in the counties. We stock a lot of trout, and yeah, go there. Our website is probably one of the best state organization websites in the country. So if there's a place to fish around you, it'll be there.
Yeah,
or just go to the local pond and catch the bluegill.
That's right.
And Maxine mentioned that Wolf Creek Hatchery, that is a man-made stream.
Yes, we completely, when you go there, you'll be amazed at how good it is. It's as good as any place I've been out west or up in the Appalachians. It's a blue ribbon stream.
Sweet.
Really hard because the fish can see you, but it's worth it if you connect.
All
Did
right.
you talk about clothing when you're trout fishing? How you want to wear like drab clothes, nothing bright, so
Right.
they can.
If you're fishing really muddy water, it doesn't matter. But if you're fishing a really crystal clear creek, wear tans, wear greens, wear grays. Might get away if there's no trees around with a light blue shirt. But fish see color amazingly well, so they're gonna see you sneaking up on them in your bright orange shirt, in your bright pink shirt, in your bright green shirt. So really dull colors, that would help. If you're fishing cold water, you might want to invest in waders or just not get in the water. But yeah, outside of sunglasses are the best investment. Where am I?
You left them inside.
All right. Is there
Right.
any other questions that we may have missed or you're thinking of before we let you all go? If you're going to be with us through the weekend, you may have to put up with us a little bit more if you happen to be doing the campfire cooking bright and early in the morning. I'll be in front of the camera then. The one you've heard kind of in the background with the camera right now, that's Courtney. Courtney is going to be teaching bow fishing. So if you signed up for either of those classes with us this weekend, you're going to have to put up with us a little bit more here at camp. And we sure do wish all of you all are here, but we're sure glad you all joined us. There they are tonight in our Zoom. And if there's any questions, you all have gotten emails from Olivia and from DJ. So
We're filming this in 2022, by the way.
So well, if there's anything we missed or anything y'all think of afterwards, don't hesitate to hit us up, drop us an email, and we'll try to get back up with you. So that's everybody good? Thumbs up. Don't want to cut anybody off. I like the smiles. Thumbs up. Thanks you. And hopefully we'll see some of you all in our classes tomorrow, or if not in our classes, we'll see you all around the virtual campfire tomorrow night. You all have an awesome night, and we'll see you all
Hope I see you
tomorrow.
on the rivers.
Yeah, see you on the river too.